invite our now in flesh and blood speaker, Tyler, to come up to the table.
Tyler.
I know. So this next session is a bit of a lightning talk. It's going to be about 15 minutes. And we're going to hear from Tyler Thompson, who is the co-founder of Expeditionary, where he and his team are building a negotiation operating system. And this is an AI infrastructure that's designed for the most complex enterprise negotiations in the world, from billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions to geopolitical crises to large-scale infrastructure deals. Tyler is a veteran of the peace building field. I know it's an oxymoron, but he was founded the negotiation support unit at the U.S. State Department, which did incredible work and has advised secretaries of state on more than 40 geopolitical negotiations. So you're getting a true peace builder here who is now exploring how to apply this technology for good in many different ways. So in the next 15 minutes, he's going to share Expeditionary's story, the design philosophy behind their work, and he's going to give us a demo of their experimental conflict mediation tool as an offshoot of their core enterprise platform that's built specifically for the challenges of complex negotiation. So, Tyler, over to you.
Pretty good vamping while I'm trying to get this thing.
Well, you're like driving a spaceship.
Yeah.
You're on the Zoom, right? Okay.
I'm on the Zoom. Hang on, let's see if this sharing of screens functions. Let's try it. Are you seeing a PowerPoint?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh wait, maybe I have to make you co-host. Hang on. Go around.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank everybody for inviting me to be here. I'm Tyler Thompson, co-founder of Expeditionary. It's so funny to be sitting here right in front of Liz Hume. I was, as Nick mentioned, I was a co-founder of the negotiation support unit at the U.S. State Department. And Liz emceed our launch, actually, when we launched.
And we're pushing to get it back in.
Heck yeah.
Yes, including in Congress.
What I like to hear. Okay, so what am I doing? Can you see it now?
Yes.
Coming.
Boom. Okay. Great. Okay, so like I said, I'm Tyler from Expeditionary. Here's our logo. We're going to talk a little bit about using AI to help negotiators and mediators be better at their job. So if you look at any major negotiation failure, most of the times the institutions on either side of the failure weren't necessarily short on talent or resources. They're often short on coherence and clarity, right? Anybody who's worked in a big institution knows what I mean. Parties are forced to exclude, they're forced to execute without having a full picture of what's going on. And organizations as individuals, but the individuals within them and organizations themselves sometimes have decent instincts, but there's no time to turn them into strategy. And oftentimes in a complex negotiation, the hardest part isn't even at the table at all with your counterparts. It's actually what's going on behind the table, inside each institution, where the decisions get made, where the decisions get unmade, and then where the decisions get remade, right? And so the bigger the institution, the more difficult it is for the group to move as one. So as folks mentioned, I was a co-founder of the negotiation support unit at the U.S. State Department. I spent many years working on many different conflict negotiations. Before joining government, I spent years working directly with conflict parties in ceasefire negotiations, peace processes, constitution drafting processes. And in my work, I've been applying AI and advanced analytics for negotiation strategy and support since the mid to early 2010s. And so now at Expeditionary, we're building the tools that I always wished that we had at that time. My co-founder, Osman Ahmed, has also spent many years in the negotiation problem space, both in conflict and private sector. So I want to talk a bit more about why institutions fail in complex negotiations. There's three big categories. First is intelligence. And by intelligence, I mean like intel, managing and understanding information, right? Teams never have a full picture when it comes to intelligence. The information is everywhere and it's not actionable. They have stacks of reports. Just look at the UN, there's millions of reports that they haven't read. There's rumors, there's misinformation, there's the infamous signal chats, the one that got caught isn't the only one, right? That exists out there.
We're clear on offside. Yeah.
there's WhatsApp chats, and especially in a peace process, you'd be amazed at how much of a high stakes peace process happens on WhatsApp or on Signal chats, right? So that's all intelligence. And for the big decision makers, there's no way to see what matters when it matters. And in a peace process, if you don't have actionable, verified intelligence, then you don't know what to do. You don't know what moves to make that drive towards the core interests of the key actors. And you don't know the leverage points that the stakeholders are going to respond positively to, right? Second is on strategy. So organizations, was surprising to me once I started working for large organizations. There's often very little strategy going on when it comes to a complex negotiation, right? They walk. This is shocked. They walk in with positions. They know their goal, kind of, and they have a lot of hope, right? But there's no structured approach. There's no sequencing, right? For how are we going to get there? There's no plan for what happens when reality hits, right? And reality always hits. As an advisor in complex negotiations for large organizations, I often pushed people I was working for to do this strategic work constantly, do that homework up front, stakeholder mapping, think through your sequencing of engagements before you're in the middle of them. But it's a really hard sell to, especially in a crisis, right, to pause and do some deep war gaming or strategy exercises when everything is in motion and the signal chats are coming in, the president is screaming, and you just gotta move. You feel like you have to just move, right? And so they often would improvise. And improv is not always wrong because experienced practitioners, they have real intuition, right? There is something to be said for wisdom and using that wisdom on the fly. But the challenge is when improvisation is the result of not having any time or process to think. That's just a failure of design. That's a failure of your institutional structure, right? And so strategy, that's the big second category. Third is execution. So even if you have the intelligence perfectly, the strategy perfect, which we often don't, the institution can't execute. It can't move as one. It's too big. There's too many bosses. There's too much mess going on bureaucratically, right? And so classic examples of this, the decision authority is unclear. You have internal factions blocking things, right, that they don't like. One bureau, one agency fighting another at the strategy making table. You have ambassadors from the same side who are like stepping on each other's toes in the meeting in front of the counterpart. I've seen it happen in a million different ways, right? The incoherence, there's a lot of different ways for it to occur. And many times what happens with this is the deal won't survive the trip from the negotiating table back to the Capitol because it's already been torn apart by all the people on the inside and all the dysfunction on the inside, right? So what we're building at Expeditionary is called the negotiation operating system, okay? It's AI infrastructure for the human teams that are running the most complex negotiations in the world. And it's built to work the way that great negotiators and great negotiation teams work. Our metrics of success is that it saves time, so it'll take weeks of work and streamline it down into hours. It surfaces fatal risks and bright, big opportunities. It creates more value. So in corporate context or quantifiable dollars context, that's 10 to 40% more value. And it prevents failures, often catastrophic failures. And so in our system, the NAS, we've captured more than 70 workflows for enterprise negotiation, right? So it travels with your team across the entire life cycle of a negotiation process, from the initial need that you have through negotiation, of course, but then through implementation and iteration, right? And the difficult architectural problem that we have to solve in building the NAS is that we're not trying to solve for individual augmentation. So, and that individual augmentation is like making one person faster at their desk, right? Negotiations like this are a team sport, and most institutions, like I said, fail because they can't move as one. And so what we're trying to do is build collective intelligence frameworks for negotiations, making teams smarter together. And that involves a lot of real tech challenges on the back end. It requires a lot of work on context and memory and coordination across different role holders in an organization like the State Department or the Pentagon or a political party where there's need to know, right? You have people high up that knows certain things. There's other people that have different need to know access. This is true for any corporate structure as well. So after all that hype about the NOS, what you're going to see today is not the NOS. It's not the full thing that we're building, because I only have 15 minutes.
Get out here.
I'm getting kicked out. What I'm going to show you is a narrow slice of the strategy component of the workflows that we're talking about. And we're going to apply it to a conflict mediation content, okay? So our team built the model you're about to see, or the platform you're about to see, as part of what we call our Human X AI Negotiation Lab. We use things like the thing you're about to see today to run adversarial tests on some of the things that we're prototyping for our system. It tests model behavior, accuracy, compute, costs, bias, things like that. And so we think of this as like a learning and testing tool. And the real NOS is bigger and workflow based and a little bit too weedy for what we're about to talk about here. So Human X AI, what do we mean by this? So this conference is about intentional design. The analogy I've used with the systems that we're trying to build with AI is a pilot working with a heads-up display. So the HUD doesn't fly the plane. It surfaces what the pilot needs to see when they need to see it, right? So terrain issues, traffic, fuel, threats, so that the pilot can fly better. And the human using a HUD gets more skilled as a pilot by using it, not less. And that's the paradigm we're trying to design for. So what you're about to see, the system doesn't make decisions for the mediator in the role that's using it. It doesn't talk to the parties. What it does is it's a sparring partner. It challenges your team's thinking. It offers structures. It surfaces what you might be missing. And every consequential judgment, though, it stays human and editable, right? So the design philosophy is simple. It's to give the practitioner more clarity, more time, and more coherence so that they can do the work that actually matters, which is the relationship building, holding and owning the relationships. So the test case that we're going to use is Iran, US, with Pakistan as the mediator. So Pakistan is the perceived user here in this context, which presents its own challenges, right? Pakistan is not it's an imperfect mediator. There's a low trust environment with a lot of the different actors involved, including the US. Tehran is not a monolith. The United States, Washington is not a monolith. And we're going to focus on giving the mediation team some orientation and structured thinking for the way forward. Okay, I'm going to attempt to now transition to a different shared screen. One thing to note here, try this again, is what I'm about to show you is pre-populated, because it takes each of the segments of our tool, takes about a few seconds to run, a second to a minute, because there's a lot going on in the background. So I want to just give you, we wanted to show you as much as we can in the short amount of time that we have. So there's two workflows here, right? The first workflow is a negotiation preparation workflow that I've already worked through in its entirety. What that does is I was acting as if I was the United States, right? Thinking about analysis, alternatives, all the different strategic approaches to negotiation. We dumped a bunch of good reports like ICG reports, ISW, media reporting and things like that for context. And the first thing that the system does is starts to build out a stakeholder map for you, right? And so here you'll see the different relationships between the different key actors. You see in blue, those are the decision makers and the core parties. It's Iran, US, Iran. In this context, the US is our side, so it's blue, and then Iran's other side, so they're surrounded in a orange here, and you get a sense for the connections between different actors. This is a different way to view the same data, which is about influence, right? So who are the most influential actors and who are indirect stakeholders? Importantly, like I mentioned before, everything is editable about this system, right? Because it's only pulling from the context. Extremely important for the user team to be able to correct it, right? And so there's things like here, let's see, Hezbollah, obviously not neutral. That will be other side in the US context. You change that and it'll update the map so that it captures these types of things, right? So moving on, so we've done the full workflow with the negotiating side, but we really want to focus on this mediation prep, right? And so you'll notice I'm switching over to mediation preparation framework here. This is not a new user interface on the old data. It's actually all new structure underneath here because the mediation team has different needs. It's a structurally different approach, and it removes some of the structural determinism of a negotiation. So when I'm on the US side, I'm trying to get my goals to happen like no matter what in the best possible way. This removes some of that and allows more ideation. But it does have access to the context. Pakistan mediation team, we have it consisting of 3 core people: Field Marshal Munir, Prime Minister Sharif, Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign Minister Dar. We uploaded a couple of briefing stuff specifically for the mediator. So it's an intelligence briefing from yesterday and a couple of news reports from the last 2 weeks. And what it produces for us is core things that the mediation team needs. So the first is a conflict assessment, not a super deep dive. We can build a much deeper approach, but this is just core things that they need for the mediation. You'll notice here, this is ripeness, right? So this is a Zartman ripeness analysis that looks at a few different nodes, gives an aggregate score of 6.5 out of 10 for this context on ripeness. And the nodes are all the different mutually hurting stalemate factors and then way out factors that create conflict ripeness. And you'll see that it's pretty good on hurts. So like you toggle over this, it explains that both sides hate this. It's not great for either of them, et cetera. But something like political space for compromise is less, right? So both sides have said, yeah, we can work with each other's frameworks, but then when you get into any of the different parts, it's a problem. Okay, so the next piece is on entry and mandate. This is a very important thing that is often overlooked by a mediator. It's like, should you be the ones mediating this? Like, what is your relevance? Why are you here? What's your leverage, et cetera? This gives a description of all of that, right? And it gives an explanation of like the profile fit for the mediator. And it talks about some issues like critical weakness here is Iran thinks that Pakistan is too pro-US. One thing that I would want to add here, so see I can edit it, is profile fit. A similar gap is that, can't spell, some in the US actors might think that Pakistan is too pro-China, right? And it's too controlled by China, right? And that's not necessarily in our analysis, right? So you'd save that, and it captures that now as core parts of the thing that the system is building on, and it kind of iterates and loops back within itself. So it's not just relying on the reports that you put in; it's responding to the things that you are adding to it, right? So the next piece is it takes that stakeholder map. It tries to start to understand the interests of the different actors. The more information you put in there, the better, and starts to build out some process architecture, right? This is, like I mentioned, this is just strategy ideation phase. So this is core building blocks of a potential strategy based on the information that was put into it. Now, the key thing here is this is separated by phases of intensity, right? So first with crisis stabilization, which is like the here and now, and then building towards a comprehensive agreement implementation. You shouldn't necessarily think of this as temporal, like do this, then that, but instead these are more nebulous phases that one can't really happen without some foundation behind it. So each of these are different nodes. So the first is Pakistani mediation team needs to get its team together and understand certain things. The likely first 2 actions to get any confidence building movement has to do with Strait of Hormuz and the ceasefire continuation. It shows the relationships between these different nodes. Very importantly is these what we call critical gates, right? So these critical gates are the most important factors for each of these columns to move to the next phase of the stage, right? So this critical gate is saying, okay, for the stabilization, you have to have something about straightforward moves and something about sustainable ceasefire to get to more substantive issues like nuclear and things like that. I want to briefly let something work here for a second. So in this stabilization gate, this is the first one. We're going to get some analysis on how to make that gate open, right? And how to ideate when it doesn't open correctly.
How to open the straightforward moves.
The gate, the
I was gonna
decision.
be like, good luck. Okay.
But yes, that is the core goal. A couple other things here. You're going to see lines, right, that show which aspect informs, requires, or enables the others. The checkered box here shows that this is a very constrained track, a lot of issues. This track is called Israel Spoiler Management. I don't know if you can see it there. Israel is flagged as a spoiler in the system because they can unilaterally do things that will impact the negotiation, even though they're not at the negotiating table, right? They can attack Iran, they can attack Lebanon outside of the process. And so a big thing that a mediator has to do is figure out how to work with that spoiler so that their process can continue. Anyway, so yes, those are those aspects. Okay, here. So stabilization gate. How do we get to this first phase of ceasefire work plus a little bit of movement on straightforward moves? And so it's suggesting some quiet consolidation first. 3-person team coordinates with both capitals, gives some key risks. Trump is impatient. Extended back channel work could lead him to bypass Pakistan entirely. Says what must go right. And then very importantly, if this fails, what else you can try. So there's like option B, option C. And the whole system is not designed to be kind of spark. So you can just work with each of these aspects. 1 minute. Okay, real quickly, there's issues related to leverage and power, who you can work with. It gives a leverage, mediation leverage inventory. I did want to try putting in, I want to show you something here, so I don't have 1 minute left. The system has, you can talk to it, right? So there's a mediation advisor bot here, and you can see which context it's using. We want to ask it a question. I have a pre-written question here about, the question is essentially that Oman has revealed to Pakistan in the back channel that IRGC is going to do something unilaterally out of its chain of command to scuttle the process, right? To scuttle the talks and to assert its authority within the Iranian system. Shortly thereafter, Saudi Arabia says, we've got missiles in the air. Missiles are flying from Iran towards a couple of GCC countries and Israel, right? And so my question to it was, how should we manage this and what should our call list be? So it has all this context. Now, when the shit hits the fan, you can start to think about what to do. And this is all based on the context within the system that we've worked with. So first is about priority 1, damage control. Field Marshal makes immediate actions. First thing he does is he calls Trump, emphasize this contradicts Iranian government. There's multiple steps to what to do. But you'll see here is the most important thing to note is that it's built on a collaboration with the system. That you're not it's not using ChatGPT or like a call of a single shot issue related to just a question that you have. It understands your context. You're building the context together, and that way you can really ideate with it and feel good that it's where the information is coming from is based on something that you yourself have vetted. And so with that, I will stop.
Thank you so much, Tyler. That was wonderful. Yes. So we're not going to have time for questions for this segment, but if you're here in person, Tyler's right here. So and we're almost done. We have about 40 minutes left. For folks online, yes.
We're recruiting design partners too,
yeah.
So if you're interested in working with us, just scan that QR, and I really appreciate your time and attention.
Yes, yeah. And for folks online who want to connect to Tyler and have questions for him, we'll be sure to make sure we can facilitate that.